we're stuck in the middle of this state where we're managing tasks, we're managing exhausted teams, and we're trying to still show up for ourselves. And it seems like things are just not working anymore, and we're still being pushed to show up, to produce, to lead change initiatives in both product and process and people when workforce is changing and they're also struggling to get through all of this change. Now, you may be feeling like, wow, the things we're doing right now just aren't working anymore, and you keep pushing and you try to check off more in your list every day and you're just not getting ahead. And slowly productivity is dropping and your teams are checking out. Small mistakes are starting to become big mistakes, not only in your operations, but out to your clients, out to your members. And even the top talent, the reliable people, are starting to back up and go into that survivorship mode of protecting themselves. So when I work with middle leaders, everything on paper looks like we're moving forward. It looks like we're solving the problems. But do you feel that the energy, the vibe still hasn't changed? It still feels draining and forced. And that's because those solutions are based on time management and very specific tools, accountability systems, and that's great. Those are all needed as you begin to guide forward. But that's the oversight of the underlying patterns that still need to shift in behavior. So a clear pathway when you're trying to lead change and you're coming from this exhausted or depleted state is a clear pathway on what to look for and where the shifts are actually needed in energy patterns. Let's get into the 4 patterns I'm seeing in programs that, regardless of the structure and environment changes, these behavior patterns are stuck and need to be addressed. So you can begin to shift and release those things holding people back. We need to stop asking, how do I get more out of my team now that we have restructured the environment, and start asking what energy patterns are driving how our team shows up or how they're holding them back. The first pattern I want to talk about is overextended energy. This is the always on pattern. And what it can look like is high performers taking on too much, making other people under responsible. It's saying yes to everything just to get it done. Check, check, check. What should feel like progress, but it doesn't. And eventually you start slowing down. It's not sustainable. And in this overextended energy pattern, what you often see is leaders rewarding it with bonus and accolades. But that's not actually helping the team to move forward, to break the overextended pattern. So what you're going to want to do to shift this pattern is to reset expectations for capacity, for what we should be working on, what brings value. So having a capacity conversation, and this could be in specific roles, this could be specific seasons, busy or not busy. This is across departments to support one another and not to overload when they're already overextended. This is having conversations about prioritization instead of just constant availability and interruptions. And then you want to reinforce, how do we sustain this versus quick performance in firefighting? The second one is protective energy. This is the pulling back pattern that you might see. It's when people have minimal engagement, that they are avoiding at any cost that extra responsibility. They're not really speaking up in meetings anymore. They're waiting for other people to take the task instead of volunteering to put it on their plate. And they might even have some quiet resistance to change. So that might not be direct in the meeting, but it's going to be very passive aggressive or passive after the meeting. That's that gossip and drama that might be happening within your team. So what leaders automatically kind of assume in this pattern is people have poor attitudes. They have a lack of motivation and drive. But what's happening at the member level is energy conservation. They're past their limit, their capacity. And so this protection, this survivorship mode goes into play. So what will help shift this protective energy pattern is to clarify priorities, roles, responsibilities, who owns what and when, and having a really clear look across the team so that you can see when someone continues to be overloaded and other people are underloaded. Reducing that unnecessary noise around them. There are things that we don't need to be doing right now. There are things when you are doing change management that just need to pause so you can focus on the initiative. And having these conversations on priorities and getting rid of that unnecessary noise and waste is going to begin to rebuild trust across the team to have these conversations. The world we are in calls that psychological safety, that not only can you speak up about things, but you can speak up about things and feel safe to do so. Do you see where that protective energy can now release the pattern? The third behavior pattern that you may be seeing kind of holding your team back is that reactive energy. This is the firefighting that society loves to reward. It can look like jumping in right away, saving the day. It can look like constant urgency. Your interruptions and whatever pops in your calendar kind of drives the day. You're not very intentional about what you're working on. And there's really no space for that proactive work. And it's interesting when you get in this firefighter mode, when you do get space, you automatically fill it instead of maybe giving yourself some grace and space to think, to be creative, to work on that passion project. You just fill it with another emergency. Now, when leaders recognize this very publicly and continue to reward it, firefighting becomes not just a urgent and important right now, it becomes the norm. This is how your schedule runs. To begin to shift and release this pattern, you're going to want to create some structure and conversations around response and reaction. What is actually an emergency? What is not as important? And we still need to get it done, but not right now. Even a simple boundary like core hours and who to contact outside of those core hours. This behavior pattern dies hard. So you're going to need a lot of consistency and reinforcement as you begin to shift this pattern, because it is natural to just jump back into firefighting mode and get back into those old cycles. The fourth behavior pattern that I'm seeing that doesn't need as much a shift, but an enhancement is the aligned energy pattern. And this is the performance sweet spot. You have clear priorities, you have very steady outputs where you're leveling those spikes of high workload. So you're kind of expanding that out with using third-party tools, not overloading with the non-urgent things, and recognizing across departments when your high season is. So those spikes aren't so high of high workload. It's more leveled out. You're not overextending your hours, your capacity, and getting to a point where it's not sustainable. You just want to check out. And then ownership is across the team. Right now, it's so focused on the leader, and the leader should know what's going on with their team and removing the hurdles, but they shouldn't own it all. The team also owns accountability, those healthy conflict conversations, and the environment they work in together. Now, we talked about 4 patterns: the overextended energy pattern, the protective energy pattern, reactive energy pattern, and then that nice aligned energy pattern. But there's one more underlying pattern that really needs a big shift because it has a ripple effect. And that's, how do you show up as a leader? What is your patterns? When I'm working with middle managers, that's the first question I ask. Does it make them the key variable to all their problems on their team? Absolutely not. But as a leader, you set the energy, you set the tone of your meetings, of how your team communicates, of how conflict and change is addressed. We have all had those leaders where there's a conflict that arises in a meeting or between 2 team members, and they either respond with avoidance, it will just go away, which it doesn't, or they tackle it head on, and then they address any underlying kind of energy variables that went behind that conflict. Maybe it's lack of system use. Maybe it's how team members were communicating with each other. Maybe it's something that was small, like a broken blinker, and now has escalated over time. And they tackle it head on without throwing people under the bus. So as a leader, we need to be managing our energy, our response to change, to conflict, as an example, because it will have ripple effects. Why I'm talking about these patterns is most leaders are being taught how to manage workload, which is great. That's where workflow optimization comes from. That's where time management tools come to play. But they're not taught how to manage their team, how to manage that energy of why people are naturally motivated and thrive and produce, and others have to be pushed. And you're spending all your time on poor performance and cleanup. That's the gap. By shifting the patterns of behavior, you can feed performance and results naturally. So the question isn't what else do we add? What other tools do we need? It's what do we need to shift?